Buddy out, first and third. David Fry digs in. He squares. He tried to bunt, and it hit the bat and then hit him in the face. Or did it hit him square in the face?
I don't know.
What you just witnessed was the beginning of one of baseball's most horrifying moments in recent memory. A routine sacrifice bunt turned into a nightmare that would ripple through the entire sports world. But what the cameras captured next was even more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. The horrifying moment that stopped baseball. There are moments in sports that transcend the game itself, moments so visceral, so genuinely terrifying that they remind us of the very real human beings beneath those uniforms. September 23rd, 2025 gave us one of those moments, and what unfolded at Progressive Field that evening would send shockwaves through the baseball world, spawning viral footage that millions would watch with hands covering their mouths in horror. It was supposed to be just another crucial division game. The Cleveland Guardians were locked in a tight battle with the Detroit Tigers, fighting tooth and nail for control of the American League Central. The tension in the stadium was palpable. You could feel it in every pitch, every swing, every roar from the crowd. But nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, was prepared for what was about to happen in the bottom of the 6th inning. David Fry stepped into the batter's box. The versatile utility player who had become something of a folk hero in Cleveland after his legendary walk-off home run in the 2024 ALCS was looking to move a runner from second base. The situation called for a sacrifice bunt, a fundamental play that thousands of batters execute safely every single season. The count stood at 2-1. On the mound, Tigers ace Tarik Skubal, one of the most dominant pitchers in baseball, was in his rhythm. What happened next unfolded in a fraction of a second, but the impact would reverberate for weeks. Skubal wound up and delivered. The radar gun registered 99.1 miles per hour on a four-seam fastball. Not just fast, but absolutely scorching. Fry squared around to bunt, his bat coming forward to deaden the ball. But this is where baseball's cruel physics took over. The ball made contact with Fry's bat, just a glancing blow, but that tiny deflection was enough to redirect its trajectory. And in the most nightmarish of scenarios, that redirected baseball, still carrying tremendous velocity, struck David Fry directly in the face.
Skubal threw his hat and glove down as soon as he threw the pitch and saw what happened. We just went from fever pitch to eerie silence.
The sound that echoed through Progressive Field wasn't the usual crack of bat meeting ball. It was something else entirely, something that made 30,000 fans collectively gasp in horror. Fry went down immediately, collapsing in the batter's box as if his strings had been cut. And then the blood, visible, immediate, undeniable blood. The broadcast footage captured everything in excruciating high definition. And this is where our story takes on its viral dimension, because what the cameras recorded that night would soon be viewed millions of times across every conceivable social media platform. The footage shows the exact moment of impact, the way Fry's body crumpled, the immediate response of both teams' players and staff. It's graphic, it's disturbing, it's the kind of content that comes with warnings to watch at your own discretion. But what makes this footage particularly haunting is the reaction of Tarik Skubal himself. The moment, the very instant, he saw what his pitch had done, Skubal removed his cap and glove in horror. This wasn't a competitive moment anymore. This wasn't about baseball. A fellow human being was hurt, badly hurt, and Skubal had a front row seat to the carnage.
And unfortunately for Skubal, he had a front row seat, and that's why he tossed his hat and just walked away as soon as he could. So not only will David Fry not be able to continue, but the Guardians are going to have to get a hitter to take his place in the middle of this at-bat. Right now, all concerns are on the status of David Fry.
The stadium, which had been roaring with playoff race intensity just seconds before, fell into what announcers described as an eerie silence. That's the thing about these moments. They have a way of putting everything into stark perspective. Suddenly, winning and losing didn't matter. Division standings didn't matter. All that mattered was the man lying in the dirt, blood pooling around him, while athletic trainers sprinted onto the field. The medical staff rushed to Fry's side, and for several agonizing minutes, he remained on the ground. Players from both teams stood frozen, many with hands on their hips or covering their mouths, that universal gesture of shock and concern. You could see teammates saying prayers. You could see hardened baseball veterans with tears in their eyes, because they all knew, they all understood that this could have been so much worse. The viral nature of this footage speaks to something primal in human nature. We're drawn to these moments of crisis, these glimpses of vulnerability and danger. Within hours of the incident, clips were spreading across X, formerly Twitter, ESPN, Yahoo Sports, TMZ, and countless other platforms. Posts expressing shock and prayers for Fry amassed thousands of views and engagements, with comment sections filled with everything from medical speculation to personal stories of similar injuries to debates about protective equipment in baseball. The broadcast itself provided multiple angles, and each replay seemed more visceral than the last. Slow-motion footage showed the exact point of contact, the way the ball compressed against Fry's face, the immediate swelling and trauma. News outlets like CNN and the Daily Mail emphasized just how disturbing the video was, yet they continued to share it, understanding that the public's need to witness and process these events outweighed concerns about the graphic nature of the content. But here's what made this particular incident even more emotionally charged. David Fry isn't just any player. This is a guy who had already overcome incredible odds just to make it to the major leagues. Drafted in the 7th round, 215th overall, back in 2018, Fry spent years grinding through the minor leagues, surviving the COVID-19 shutdown that cancelled the entire 2020 season, living on his wife's income while playing AAA ball in Columbus, wondering if he'd ever get his shot at the big leagues. And then, when he finally did get that shot, he seized it. He became a 2024 All-Star. He hit that incredible walk-off home run in the ALCS that had Cleveland fans losing their minds. He'd already undergone elbow surgery in late 2024 and fought his way back from that. This was a guy who had earned every bit of respect and admiration from baseball fans everywhere. And now, there he was, lying in the dirt with a catastrophic facial injury, his improbable baseball dream potentially hanging in the balance.
Chad Wolf to Jeff Desjardins on the scene immediately to try and take care of David.
Well, at least he's sitting up, and that's
so David up under his own power, and Scooble, he's right there checking on Fry as well, because as I said, he saw the whole thing unfold.
Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Fry sat up. He gave a thumbs up to the crowd, that simple gesture that athletes use to tell everyone, "I'm okay, I'm going to be okay." But even as he did this, even as he showed incredible toughness and awareness of the moment, you could see the trauma on his face. The swelling had already begun. The damage was evident. He was carted off the field, waving to fans as he went, and Progressive Field erupted in applause. Not celebration, but solidarity, support, and prayers. The game would continue, with the Guardians eventually winning 5-2 and tying the Tigers for the division lead, but nobody was really thinking about that. The question on everyone's mind was simple and terrifying. How bad was it? How badly was David Fry hurt? As Fry disappeared into the tunnel, heading for immediate medical evaluation, the viral machine was already churning. Within the hour, the footage would be everywhere, viewed and shared by millions, dissected and analyzed, replayed and scrutinized. This was more than just a baseball injury. This had become a cultural moment, a stark reminder of the very real dangers these athletes face every single time they step into the batter's box. The devastating diagnosis and remarkable recovery. The hours following David Fry's injury were filled with anxious uncertainty. Fans refreshed their social media feeds obsessively, looking for any scrap of information. Medical experts weighed in with speculation about possible injuries. And then, on September 24, 2025, the Cleveland Guardians issued an official update that confirmed everyone's worst fears while simultaneously offering a glimmer of hope. The diagnosis was brutal in its specificity. Multiple minimally displaced left-sided facial and nasal fractures, including a broken nose. Let's break down what that actually means, because the medical terminology can sometimes obscure the very real human suffering involved here. When we talk about multiple fractures, we're not talking about one clean break. We're talking about several bones in Fry's face being shattered by the impact of a 99-mile-per-hour baseball. The left side of his face bore the brunt of the damage. Imagine the force required to break multiple facial bones simultaneously, and his nose completely broken. The immediate treatment was more straightforward but no less uncomfortable. Fry received stitches in his nose, and his nostrils were initially packed with gauze to control bleeding and swelling. If you've never experienced nasal packing, count yourself lucky. It's one of the most uncomfortable medical interventions imaginable, making it nearly impossible to breathe through your nose and creating constant pressure that can trigger headaches and general misery. But perhaps the most important piece of medical news was this. Fry was cleared of any brain or head trauma. No concussion, no skull fractures, no intracranial bleeding. Guardians manager Stephen Vogt summed it up perfectly when he said, "Broken bones heal. We're all really happy that David's okay." The recovery timeline was set at 6 to 8 weeks for full recovery, which meant Fry would potentially miss the end of the regular season and, heartbreakingly, any playoff run the Guardians might make. After everything he'd done in the 2024 postseason, after becoming a legend in Cleveland baseball lore, he wouldn't be able to help his team when they needed him most. He was placed on the 10-day injured list, retroactive to September 23rd, and the team recalled outfielder Jonathan Rodriguez from AAA Columbus to fill his roster spot. Fry was discharged from the Cleveland Clinic on September 24th, less than 24 hours after the injury, to rest at home with his family. His wife, Rebecca, and their young daughter, Evelyn, were on their way to join him. The speed of his discharge was actually a positive sign. It indicated that doctors felt comfortable with his stability and weren't concerned about immediate complications, but the physical recovery was only part of the story. What happened in the days following the injury revealed the true character of David Fry, the Cleveland Guardians organization, and the baseball community at large. First, there was the remarkable gesture from Tarik Skubal. The Tigers ace, who had been visibly distraught on the field, visited Fry in the hospital, expressing remorse and emphasizing that health is more important than a baseball game. This wasn't just a PR move or a token gesture. Skubal was genuinely shaken by what had happened, and his visit demonstrated the brotherhood that exists among players despite the competitive nature of the sport. Then came the outpouring of support from across the baseball world. Teammates visited Fry in the hospital on the night of the injury, where, incredibly, he was already joking around despite the pain and trauma. Even Cleveland Cavaliers star Donovan Mitchell stopped by to show his support, bridging the gap between Cleveland's sports franchises in a beautiful display of citywide solidarity. On September 28th, just 5 days after the horrific injury, Fry returned to the clubhouse for the Guardians' playoff-clinching celebration. His appearance was shocking and inspiring in equal measure. His face was still visibly swollen, his nose taped up, the physical evidence of trauma impossible to miss. But there he was, smiling, celebrating with his teammates, receiving a pennant flag from Slider, and calling it a huge blessing to be back with the team so soon. Fry's own words about the incident reveal a remarkable perspective. He described the outcome as 100% a God thing, noting that the pitch's impact was inches away from real problems, like severe head trauma. When asked how he was feeling, he responded, "I feel great, all things considered," a response that speaks volumes about his mindset and resilience. Fans on social media couldn't get enough of Fry's toughness, with posts buzzing about him, holding his broken face together with a single band-aid. The narrative had shifted from tragedy to triumph, from horror to hope. There's an interesting and somewhat ironic postscript to Fry's injury. Jonathan Rodriguez, who was called up to replace him, became something of a postseason hero himself. On September 27th, Rodriguez contributed key hits in the clincher against the Texas Rangers, including a walk-off hit by pitch that scored the winning run. Fans joked that Fry's sacrifice had unlocked Rodriguez's hot streak, finding a silver lining in what had been such a traumatic event. Fry was scheduled for a re-examination on October 2nd, 2025, where doctors would assess his healing progress and determine any next steps in his recovery. As of the last reports, no medical complications had been reported, and his steady progress continued to amaze everyone who knew the details of his injury. The broader context and what this means for baseball. David Fry's injury didn't happen in a vacuum. To truly understand the significance of what occurred on September 23, 2025, and why the footage went so viral, we need to examine the broader context of hit-by-pitch injuries in baseball, the evolution of the sport's dangers, and what, if anything, can be done to protect players from similar fates. Let's start with a sobering reality. Fry is far from the first player to suffer a devastating facial injury from a baseball. In fact, there's a long and troubling history of such incidents in Major League Baseball, each one serving as a stark reminder of just how dangerous this sport can be. Consider Giancarlo Stanton in 2014. Then playing for the Miami Marlins, Stanton was hit in the face by a 93 mph fastball from Mike Fiers. The injury was catastrophic. Facial lacerations, multiple facial fractures including his orbital bone, and extensive dental damage. He required extensive surgery and hospitalization, missed 2 months, and struggled initially upon his return. Though Stanton would go on to win the NL MVP in 2021, his injury sparked serious discussions about protective equipment for batters. Or Jose Bautista in 2013. The Toronto Blue Jays slugger was struck in the face by a 93 mph fastball, suffering a fractured left orbital rim and broken nose. He missed 5 weeks and became a vocal advocate for better facial protection. More recently, Kevin Pillar in 2021, then with the New York Mets, was hit squarely in the nose by a 95 mph fastball. Multiple nasal fractures and severe swelling followed, though he remarkably returned just 5 days later. Pillar later added a C-flap to his helmet for additional protection. In 2023 alone, we saw multiple such injuries. Taylor Ward of the Los Angeles Angels was struck by a 92 mph sinker, suffering 3 facial fractures including his orbital floor, temple, and jaw, plus a broken nose. He underwent reconstruction surgery with 3 plates inserted and was forced to maintain a liquid diet for weeks. Justin Turner suffered a broken nose and sinus fractures during spring training that year, while Kyle Farmer of the Minnesota Twins was drilled by a 94 mph fastball, resulting in a broken nose and sinus fractures. But to truly understand the historical context of these injuries, we need to go back to 1967 and the case of Tony Conigliaro. The Boston Red Sox outfielder was struck in the face by a 90 mph fastball from Jack Hamilton of the Angels. The injury was horrific: fractured cheekbone, dislocated jaw, severe retinal damage, and a devastating black eye. Conigliaro missed the rest of 1967 and all of 1968, suffered partial vision loss that affected his entire career, and retired at just 32 years old. His case remains one of the most infamous injuries in MLB history and serves as a cautionary tale about the very real dangers inherent in the sport. So why do these injuries keep happening? And more importantly, why does it seem like they're happening more frequently and with greater severity? The answer lies in one simple, undeniable fact. Pitchers are throwing harder than ever before. The average fastball velocity in Major League Baseball has been steadily climbing for decades, and we're now at a point where fastballs regularly exceed 94 mph league-wide. Elite pitchers like Tarik Skubal routinely hit 99 to 100 mph. Some flamethrowers push past 101, 102, even 103 mph. When you're talking about those kinds of velocities, you're dealing with physics that our brains can barely comprehend. A 100 mph fastball covers the roughly 60 feet from the pitcher's mound to home plate in about 0.4 seconds, 4/10 of a second. That's barely enough time for a batter to process what kind of pitch is coming, let alone react to it. When something goes wrong, when a pitch gets away, when a batter loses sight of the ball for a split second, when a bunted ball redirects like it did with Fry, there's simply no time to get out of the way. This has sparked an ongoing debate in baseball about protective equipment. Currently, batters wear helmets, and many have adopted the C-flap extension that provides some additional protection to the jaw and face. But these don't protect the full face, particularly the nose and orbital areas where so many of these injuries occur. Some have proposed full-face shields, similar to what hockey goalies wear. The technology exists. We could absolutely protect players better than we currently do. But here's where it gets complicated. Many players resist wearing additional protective equipment, arguing that it interferes with their vision, feels cumbersome, or simply doesn't fit with the traditional aesthetics of the game. There's also a cultural element at play, a sort of machismo that suggests wearing too much protection is somehow less tough, less professional. But after watching the footage of David Fry's injury, after seeing him collapse in a pool of his own blood, after understanding that he was inches away from potential career-ending or even life-threatening trauma, you have to ask, is tradition really worth the risk? The viral spread of Fry's injury footage serves an important purpose in this debate. Yes, it's graphic. Yes, it's disturbing. But it's also undeniably real. It forces fans, players, and league officials to confront the actual dangers of the sport rather than romanticizing the toughness and tradition of baseball. When millions of people watch that footage and feel their stomachs drop, when they imagine what it would be like to be hit in the face by a 99 mph fastball, it creates creates a moment of collective awareness that can drive change. Now let's talk about David Fry himself and what makes his story so compelling beyond just this injury. Fry's career trajectory is the definition of an underdog story. Drafted in the 7th round, 215th overall in 2018 by the Milwaukee Brewers, he was never supposed to be a star. He spent years grinding through the minor leagues, enduring the long bus rides, the small crowds, the constant uncertainty about whether any of this would ever amount to anything. In 2019, playing for the Single-A Wisconsin Timber Rattlers, he hit 258 with 17 home runs. Solid numbers, but nothing that screamed future all-star. Then came 2020, and the COVID-19 pandemic wiped out the entire minor league season. For a player like Fry, who was already on the older side for a prospect, this was potentially devastating. A full year of development lost, a full year of uncertainty about whether baseball would even continue in any meaningful way, but Fry persevered. He was traded to the Cleveland Guardians in November 2021 and spent all of 2022 in AAA Columbus, hitting 256 with 17 home runs while relying on his wife Rebecca's income to make ends meet. The life of a minor league baseball player is often romanticized, but the reality is far less glamorous. Low pay, constant travel, and the nagging knowledge that the vast majority of players at this level will never reach the majors. Fry finally made his MLB debut on May 1st, 2023, coming in as a pinch runner at Yankee Stadium. It wasn't a Hollywood moment. He didn't get a hit or make a spectacular play, but he was there. He had made it. Against all odds, David Fry was a Major League Baseball player. What followed was even more remarkable. Fry's versatility became his calling card. He played catcher, first base, third base, left field, right field, wherever the Guardians needed him. He even pitched in 2 games, posting a 12.60 ERA that he probably doesn't love to talk about, but more importantly, he could hit. In 2024, Fry absolutely broke out, slashing .263, .356, .448 with 14 home runs and 51 RBI in 122 games. He earned his first All-Star selection, a dream that must have seemed impossible just a few years earlier when he was contemplating a coaching career instead of a playing one. But it was in the 2024 postseason where Fry truly became a legend in Cleveland. In ALDS Game 4 against Detroit, he hit a pinch hit go-ahead home run in the 7th inning, only the second such homer in franchise postseason history, and added an RBI bunt in the 9th. Then, in ALCS Game 3 against the New York Yankees, he hit a 2-run walk-off home run in the 10th inning off Clay Holmes, sending Progressive Field into absolute pandemonium. That moment, that walk-off homer, is what makes the 2025 facial injury so particularly cruel. Fry had finally arrived. He had become the hero. He had proven that late-round picks can beat the odds, that persistence and versatility can overcome raw talent, that underdogs can have their day. And then came the 2025 season, which has been a study in adversity. In late 2024, Fry was diagnosed with a flexor strain and chronically insufficient ulnar collateral ligament, UCL. While it wasn't a full tear requiring Tommy John surgery, he underwent operative repair in October 2024, beginning a 6 to 8 month rehabilitation process.
Yeah, it was like almost before the All-Star break that we knew something was probably wrong. And it was like, hey, we're just going to tell people, you know, we're day to day on it. And it stunk, but like it never really bothered me too much hitting. And the coolest part was Voter and the org being like, hey, we're going to keep you active. We want you to hit. So I got to be part of really cool moments down the stretch with them allowing me to stay active. But yeah, so that part was all fun, and then surgery's no fun.
He missed the first 2 months of the 2025 season, starting the year on the injured list and not being activated until May 31st. When he returned, he was limited primarily to designated hitter duties to protect his recovering elbow, and the numbers reflected his struggles. In 66 games before the facial injury, he was hitting just 171 with a .229 on-base percentage, a far cry from his 2024 All-Star form. Then came September 23rd and the facial injury that we've been discussing. For many players, this would have been the breaking point. The elbow surgery, the prolonged recovery, the offensive struggles, and now a devastating facial injury that could easily have been career-ending. It would be entirely understandable for someone to look at that sequence of events and think, maybe it's time to hang it up. Maybe my body is telling me something. But that's not David Fry. His response to adversity has been nothing short of inspirational. His faith, his family support, his perspective on what truly matters, all of these have shone through in the darkest moments. When he called his recovery from the facial injury 100% 100% a God thing, and noted that he was inches away from real problems. He wasn't just offering empty platitudes. He was genuinely grateful to have escaped with only broken facial bones. But perhaps most importantly, the widespread sharing and viewing of this footage has created a moment of collective empathy. When millions of people watch David Fry get hit in the face, they're not just watching a baseball injury, they're watching a human being suffer trauma, and they're responding with genuine concern and compassion. In an age where we often feel disconnected from the athletes we watch on our screens, these moments remind us that we're all human, all vulnerable, all just trying to get through this life intact. As of the latest updates, Fry is progressing well in his recovery, with a re-examination scheduled for October 2nd, 2025. The 6 to 8 week timeline for full recovery means he'll likely be ready for the start of the 2026 season, giving him a full off-season to heal both physically and mentally. Baseball will continue. Players will continue stepping into the batter's box, facing pitchers who throw harder every year. More injuries will unfortunately occur, but maybe, just maybe, incidents like David Fry's will push the sport toward better safety measures, better protective equipment, and a better understanding of what we're really asking these athletes to do. And when David Fry returns to the field in 2026, you can bet that Progressive Field will erupt in applause, not just for the player he is, but for the person he's shown himself to be through all of this adversity. Because in the end, that's what great sports stories are really about. Not the statistics or the championships, but the human beings who refuse to give up, no matter what life throws at them, even when what life throws at them is a 99 mark fastball directly to the face. Thanks for watching. Check out other cards on the screen.